West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe.
7 a.m. in the
Jeff
Mile
and
High
Bill
City on
Show.
this Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk, 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations, you're waking up in the greatest country in history. Let's get to work. Got a lot to talk about this hour. Joining us in a bit is Jeff Crank, Congressman from Congressional District 5. Looking forward to having him join us. It's the Colorado Springs area. We're going to ask him about Space Force. We're going to talk about the big, beautiful bill. Plus, take your phone calls and texts. So join the conversation, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Campbell Law text line at 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. All right, now it's time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Good Tuesday morning, 60 and mostly cloudy. We had some thunder showers in the area up and down the Front Range early this morning and maybe an hour ago in some parts in Denver. Expecting a high of 74 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
Are you open to negotiating with the Iranians right now, or do you want to wait?
I don't know. I've been negotiating. I told them to do the deal. They should have done the deal. Their cities have been blown to pieces. Have lost a lot of people. They should have done the deal. I told them do the deal. So I don't know. I'm not too much in a mood to negotiate now.
DJT on Air Force One early this morning, 47 back in the U.S. after exiting the G7 summit in Canada early. The president said his departure was due to the conflict between Israel and Iran, of course, and he needed to focus on the matter. He's expected to meet with his National Security Council today. He says he wants an end, not just a ceasefire.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here?
An end. A real end, not a ceasefire. An end.
So something that would be permanent?
Yeah. Or giving up entirely. That's okay too.
Are you close there? Is that possible? Is that possible in the next 24
Why not? Certainly possible. Complete give up. That's possible, yeah.
Here's Pete Hegseth.
What it looks like right now is we're vigilant. We're prepared, and we've messaged consistently from the beginning that we're in the region to defend our people and our assets. And Israel took an action out of self-defense. We believe that Iran, as President has said from the beginning, should not have a nuclear weapon. That position hasn't changed. They can give it up peacefully. That position hasn't changed. And as a result, right now, we've got assets in the region, and we're going to defend them. And we're gonna be strong in the process. So people are reading into a lot of aspects right now. We're strong, we're prepared, we're defensive, and President Trump hopes there can be peace.
And 47 says he has not reached out to Iran for peace talks in any way, shape, or form. If they want to talk, they know how to reach him. That's what he posted on Truth Social just a few minutes ago, DJT. The G7 nations say Iran can't get a nuclear weapon and that Israel has the right to defend itself. The joint statement was issued by the heads of the U.S., UK, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, Japan, and the EU at the G7 summit in Canada Monday. A federal jury in Denver has ruled MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell must pay over $2 million in damages for defamation. Jurors say Lindell and his media company Frank Speech made reckless claims about Dominion voting systems. Executive Eric Coomer after the 2020 election. Coomer sued, saying Lindell called him treasonous and caused emotional distress. FBI Director Kash Patel announces documents have been uncovered revealing 2020 election interference by the Chinese Communist Party. The story broken by Just the News. It was a Chinese plot to create fake mail-in ballots in 2020. Police in Aurora investigating a shooting that critically wounded a 3-year-old boy. Police say the boy was shot at an apartment complex near East Center Point Drive Monday morning. The boy's mother told police she heard a gunshot in the house and then found her wounded son. He was taken to urgent care and then transferred to a local children's hospital. Investigators don't believe the wound was self-inflicted. The suspect accused of killing a Minnesota state lawmaker and her husband over the weekend is now facing federal charges. That means Vance Bolter could face the death penalty if convicted. He's also charged with shooting and wounding a Democratic state senator and his wife.
Did you see he killed the
more
dog?
Death
They had to
penalties.
put the dog down.
Yeah, I saw that. And the dog.
Jeez.
Well, had to put it. Yeah, it's just
Sad.
That's why we need the death penalty. Best deterrent right there. The Florida Panthers have a chance to clinch their second straight Stanley Cup when they face the Edmonton Oilers for Game 6 tonight in Sunrise in South Florida. And the Thunder lead 3-2 after defeating Indiana last night in Oklahoma City, 120-109 in the NBA Finals. Jalen Williams had 40 points. I don't know if this is going to work here, Jeff. I'm going to try, but this is where you started talking witch talk here. Let me see if I can get it really quick here.
This several times. Why do you hate nose rings in women?
Oh gosh, I don't. Do you have a nose ring?
I don't, but many of my ilk do.
Yeah.
I'm a Catholic witch from a very queer world, and I just noticed that.
Are you an actual witch?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a
She's got to come on the show. Yeah, Stu.
I
Could
was
you
like,
hear that? Okay.
If you
I
come and
gotta-
tell me you're a witch, you get on my prayer list. That is the easiest and fastest way, folks. So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna pray you into the
Lucky
kingdom
her.
of God. God tends to
Absolutely.
use people like that, just
I agree.
so that you know.
That's
if you're out
right.
there really opposed to Jesus, there's a guy named Saul that happened to.
You just need to stop those gotcha questions. Getting tired of
There
those.
you go.
58 in Littleton. By the way, that's on, what is it? CityCast Denver.
CityCast Denver. Yep. It's a progressive. I think they did a whole thing against Lauren Boebert. I didn't really know who they were. They just had a bunch of pronouns in their bios. So I'm like showing
Awesome.
up like, oh, interesting. But no, they're pretty progressive in their activism. But like I said, dude, I
It
can
was
handle
fun,
it.
though.
After
It's
Bill
good
Thorpe,
listen.
I can handle anybody.
Absolutely, man. That's child's play there. 58 in Littleton, 57 in Arvada, 60 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your 710 5-day forecast, fair skies into the upper 50s for morning temps in the Denver, Colorado region. Then morning sun will give way to afternoon clouds Tuesday. Northerly winds will produce some moisture with scattered showers and thunderstorms likely in the afternoon. Highs going to be upper 70s, low 80s, low to mid 50s, and clear Tuesday night. Mid 80s, sunny and dry Wednesday, then getting to the middle and upper 90s Thursday and Friday. Weather brought to you by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather. Schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection at roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Dawn Watzel at the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
He's live in studio. You're not going to want to miss this conversation. Representative Jeff Crank, congressman from Congressional District 5. We're going to talk all things Big Beautiful Bill, what's happening with Space Force, all that coming up. You're not going to want to miss it. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
I think I'm just going to leave dead air here just for a sec, because here a second ago, I was running down the hall and I didn't hear Blake go to commercial. So just in honor of me missing the last commercial break, we're just going to sit here in the dark for a sec. Yes, that was my mistake. Sorry about that. This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Hopefully I get my job right this time.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. He's live in studio, willing to take phone calls, texts, have a conversation. I'm so honored to have you here, proud to have you in that position, because I've known you to be a cause man. What I mean by this is you're committed to the conservative cause. You're willing to find any way to be able to work in it. You're not just here to have a job or build a reputation. You're here because you care so much about the issues. And ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Crank, Congressman from Congressional District 5, that's down in the Colorado Springs area. Thank you for being in studio with us.
Yeah,
thanks,
Jeff.
Jeff and Bill. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, let's see. You've been in Congress now, what, 6 months?
6 months.
6 months.
Yep.
First of all, let's start. Give us an overview. How are things going? Do you like it? Is it hard work?
Yeah, how long did it take you to find the bathroom? How hard was that?
Well, I still haven't found the bathroom. Bill.
Oh, they won't tell you yet?
No, they
I'm
haven't
so
told me yet. So I have to hold it until late at night. No, it didn't take me very long. It's awesome. I mean, I just told people it would be cool to get elected to the legislature in some country somewhere, but this is the greatest country on the face of the earth. And we talk about it on staff with our staff and others. This is an office created by the Constitution of the United States, right? And it's just so cool to have your neighbors, 750,000 of your neighbors, say, "Well, we want you to go represent us at that building out there." So it's just really quite an honor to be there. It is a lot of hard work. I fly back and forth every weekend. That's the least favorite part of the job, really.
Yeah, I've always wondered how guys like when Scott tipped in or Jeff Hurd.
Oh, yeah. Right? And they have it worse than we do.
One thing to just head up to DIA from Colorado Springs, but yeah, they have 2-3 legs. If you're a member from Alaska.
Yeah, the member from Alaska. Actually, Ben Nighthorse Campbell, when he was our senator, I mean, he had to fly to Denver, then Denver to like Grand Junction. Then he caught like another flight down somewhere and then had to drive to Ignacio, which is another couple of hours. Like just a terrible thing. I don't have it quite that bad. That's the worst part of it. We work pretty long hours. It's usually I get started at 8 in the morning, 7 or 7:30, 8 in the morning, go till 7:30, 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night sometimes when we're in session. So it's a lot of work, but I will never complain about that because it's an honor to be there.
On that note, how did you feel about Brittany Pedersen bringing up, all the issues she did about, trying to raise kids? Because my wife and I worked in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, right.
And I've often said, yeah, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time, right? And if you want to serve in Congress, it's an incredibly demanding job.
Yeah.
Like really demanding. And you kind of have to walk into it with eyes wide open. Being a parent is an incredibly demanding job.
Yeah.
And you have to walk into it with eyes wide open. So, I don't know. Did you think it was fair for her to make those critiques about the job and wanting to have some new accommodations, those types of things?
Well, I believe, along with Speaker Johnson, that proxy voting in Congress is not constitutional. Because it says that you shall be there, those who are present, a certain number present there. Obviously, we don't have a court that's ruled on that specifically, but I believe it is unconstitutional to have proxy voting. And I think it's horrible for the institution because we had it during COVID and it got more partisan. It got worse. People talked to each other less during that time. And so I think it's a really bad thing for the institution. And to be honest, if we would have allowed it for proxy voting for having a child, first of all it was the mom, and then people said, well, what about the dad? Don't they get it? Well, of course. So then you've expanded it there. Well, what happens the first member of Congress who says, well, my wife has a terminal illness and I just have to take time? I mean, are we going to be so callous to say, no, you can't? Well, then you've expanded it for that. Yeah. And then what happens? It just keeps going and going. Before you know it, none of us are there. And then do you get into, the idea of like during COVID, I believe there were people who were out on a speedboat somewhere on a river going, wait, I got to cast my vote real quick. And I mean, that
And
is
you
not
know
what we
how
want.
members of Congress would absolutely have taken
Sure.
advantage
Of course. Of course.
But yeah, and I think during an interview you brought up this great point. You can take time off.
Take it off. Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
It's not against the rules
Exactly.
to take some time off. But what she wanted to do was bring in a whole new system of voting that probably would have opened some doors to some really big problems.
Yeah, Vince Fong is a congressman from California. He's a Republican, and right at that same time, Vince and his wife had a little baby, and he took some time off. He took like maybe a month off. Yeah. I think constituents understand that. I think they're okay with that.
Yeah. So that's Jeff Crank. He's live in studio. All right. Big, beautiful bill. Can you update? I've lost track of where this thing is now and the changes that are happening. Can you give us a sense of where it is in the Senate? What changes may be coming back from the Senate? Is this thing going to get passed, or are we going to continue to pay Nancy Pelosi's budget?
Well, no, I think we will get it passed. Yeah. And the reason I believe that is I believe the Republicans are committed. We're all in this together. This is President Trump's agenda, period. I mean, it's that simple. If it doesn't pass, there's a $4.5 trillion tax increase on the American people, the largest in American history. We can't let that happen. If it doesn't pass, we spend $150 billion less on our military. We spend less on base allowance for housing for our soldiers. We don't do oil and gas drilling in Anwar and offshore and open up the permitting process. These are all great things that are in this bill, right? We don't build the wall. We don't have the money for ICE to go out and to continue to do deportations of people who are here illegally if this bill doesn't pass, because they're going to run out of money. And so that's what's at stake. It's got to get done. The president knows it. And the president's shown leadership so far. He's going to have to show it in the Senate to get folks through. Where it is, as I understand it, is the Senate is working through some of the things they didn't particularly care for in the House bill. I know they don't like SALT, the state and local tax exemption. I don't like it either. But we also have to balance the votes of, we've got some members in the House that are from New York, California, Illinois. They've got to be able to go back to their constituents and say that they fought for that issue. I don't like it. I want it to be, an exemption of $5,000 or zero or something, so that all the low tax states actually do better than higher tax states in that. But we got to do what we got to do to get it through with a very narrow majority. So I think some of the SALT stuff may change. That's one thing that they're talking about. And there's a few other changes I think that the Senate's looking at doing, but I hope they don't change it too much. I feel pretty confident that the Speaker and Senator Thune, the majority leader in the Senate, are working pretty closely to make sure that before they change it in the Senate, that the Speaker feels confident he's got the votes in the House to get it through any changes that they have. So I think the president's going to have to lean on him a bit. I think that Rand Paul may or may not come along and vote for it. But regardless, we really just need 50 votes in the Senate plus the tiebreaker from the vice president. We'll get it through there.
That's good news. That's very good news. Jeff Crank's live in studio with us. If you have any questions,
go
ahead.
Yeah, following up with Congressman Crank, when we talk about the SALT deduction, I understand the pain point because what the Senate wants to do versus what the House wants to do are vastly different. It's almost a $30,000 difference.
Right.
Now, under the previous Trump administration, it was the House that was pushing for the SALT deduction to be removed, in part politically. It was a punishment for those high-tax blue states. The idea being, let's have those voters there feel the pain. Why now do members of the House not want those very same blue voters to feel the pain? Why are they backing off on the SALT deduction at this point?
Well, again, I think, Bill, it's just a matter of getting the votes in the House to get the bill through, right? And it's just this very small needle that we have to thread. We've got people who just despise SALT in the caucus, in the House caucus. I'm one of them, to be honest with you. I don't like it. I think it does reward bad behavior on the part of states when you have a high SALT deduction like that. But again, our majority is 4. And we have several members who are from, we have Claudia Tenney, we have several others from New York, just a couple, Mike Bost and a few others from Illinois. And then we've got some from California. Those are really the 3 affected states.
Yeah. And can be vulnerable in districts.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could argue that I am the reason we have the House majority. But you could also argue that Vince Fong or Mike Lawler in New York, that they are the reason we have that majority. So they've got to show that they're going back and fighting for their constituents. And at the end of the day, I mean, they'd like it to be 100% SALT deduction, which is insane. Nobody thinks that that's a good idea except them. But, I think if they're able to go back to their constituents and say, look, we fought for you. We got it increased a little bit. We're okay with that. This is the best we can do. That's probably what they're going to have to do. But, there isn't a SALT problem in the Senate because there are no Republicans who are from high-tax states.
Yeah.
All the Republicans from high-tax states were wiped out long ago.
Now, I want to follow up just on something else for a second. Earlier, you talked about the big, beautiful bill being Trump's agenda. Now, not certain this is necessarily fair, but I'm going to put on the table the idea that inside of this budget, it is an increase of both the debt and the deficit. If this is Trump's agenda, as you say, is it fair to say the idea of fiscal responsibility not as important as Trump's agenda? Is Trump's agenda debt and deficit spending? Your comments.
Yeah, well, no, it's not. For a couple of things on that. First of all, this bill doesn't cut as much as I'd like to cut. And I tell folks that all the time. This isn't a perfect bill. I wish it eliminated lots of other federal agencies, departments, and spending. I think a lot of people in the House caucus would like for it to do that. First of all, there's only some things that you can do in reconciliation and some things you can't. You can't eliminate and just say, hey, we're just not going to fund, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That's a policy statement.
Yeah, the bird rule.
Right, and the bird rule is going to get you.
Yep.
So there's a lot of
bird
stuff.
Bird rule protects Big Bird?
Yes.
Is that what we're saying?
Yes,
right.
it does.
Yes,
it's that and the relationship with Snuffleupagus. That's it.
I think it protects Big Bird's government subsidy is what the bird rule does. So, I think that's the first thing. There's a lot that we can still do on spending that we can't do in reconciliation because of the bird rule and because of that 60 vote threshold. So that's the first part of it. Second part of it is CBO has scored it as, what it's going to do to the deficit. CBO is never right on these things. They weren't right on the first 2017 tax cuts. They were way off. They don't ever take into account the economic growth that will come from doing it. They don't take into account that if we don't pass this bill, what's going to happen to our economy as far as revenue. We're going to get less revenue coming in, I believe, if we don't do this, because the economy is not going to like a $4.5 trillion tax increase. So the CBO scoring, and by the way, I think we ought to just get rid of allowing CBO to score this. I think the government ought to go out and hire a private firm like Ernst & Young or get 2 of them. But the problem with CBO and the way that they score these things is that, frankly, it's very partisan. I think I've heard something to the effect of out of the 21 or 20 so economists at the CBO, like 17 or 18 of them are registered Democrats. So they're not that Democrats are always wrong, but they are wrong when it comes to...
No, I'll say it. They're absolutely always wrong. He's nice. He has to get elected. I don't.
Even
Democrats.
a blind squirrel finds an acorn now and again. So anyway, so there's all of that. And so, yes, I understand what you're saying about the debt and the deficit. But I think those are 2 things that we need to look at. One is the scoring of CBO. I don't think it's going to be accurate. I think this is going to do a lot more. But then there's other things that we're doing besides this that we can do to cut back on spending. But to that point, the president took off the table Social Security and Medicare, and that we're not going to do anything in this. In fact, you can't do anything to Social Security and reconciliation. It's not legal to do it according to the reconciliation process. So I think we need to look at ways to get waste out of the system of government on all levels. We can't do it all right here in this. So I think we can attack the debt, and I hope that we do, because we're hurtling towards the cliff on that. But the last thing I'll say on it, and then I'll get you guys back to asking questions, is, what's the alternative? We've got Democrats who say, oh, you can't cut this and you can't cut that. Oh, you can't touch this. Well, what in the world can you touch? They don't have any answers for what you want to touch.
Never. A single dollar cut from our federal government results in headlines about people dying in streets and kids starving and stuff like that.
Right.
They cannot imagine the government, let alone the fact that we didn't have all these social safety nets until about 75 years ago. Right. So America seemed to get by just fine taking care of one another in a strong, robust civil society. Lo and behold, a wildly inefficient federal government that spent more on Heritage Foundation has pointed this out, that we have spent more on social services than all the wars combined in this nation, and we haven't moved the poverty rate at all.
Yeah. And look, there's you look at where we are as a nation. We're hurtling towards the cliff. We've got to pull back, and Republicans and Democrats have to get that in Washington. We have to figure it out. This is, again, we've got 4-vote margin in the House, which is the toughest of the chambers, and then you've got a 3-vote margin in the Senate. We got to get this thing through. It's not going to be a perfect bill, but overall, you have to look at it. I told somebody the other day who was complaining about the bill. I said, look, I have to vote yes or no. I don't have I want to do it my way button that I can push and do it the way I want it done. So I have to look at it and say, if I vote for reconciliation, is the world better or is it worse? Is our situation better or worse? If I vote against the bill, which I won't do, and by the way, this is what John Hickenlooper is doing. This is what Michael Bennett is doing. They're going to vote against work requirements for Medicaid. They're going to say it's okay if you're 35 years old living in the parent's basement that you keep getting Medicaid, even though that's not what Medicaid was intended to help.
And paid for by somebody else working hard to deliver for their family. We're going to take money from them to hand it to somebody who doesn't have a job to make sure they get services. So, we're talking with Jeff Crank. He's live in studio. Jeff, one of the critiques we have with Congress is that you could take a one-sheet bill and write, Colorado's blue skies are wonderful. Let's pass this and support that. And you send it to Congress, and it comes out 10,000 pages long with every special interest imaginable. Give us some insight into how we could reform Congress a little bit to get so focused on delivering for the American people and not so much for special interest groups.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Yeah, if you did that bill that said Colorado has blue skies and we introduced it, by the time it came out, there would be subsidies for blue skies in Colorado, right? in the bill, and then they'd tax blue skies at the same time.
Yes, right.
Probably. Look, I think there's a lot of things that Congress can do. First and foremost, we have to return. It's a totally broken system right now. We have to get it to return to where we're actually considering legislation. We've been on autopilot for the last many years with these continuing resolutions, right? And so we never go back and examine spending. We just say, well, we'll just do what we did last year because that's good enough. And actually, Democrats like that. They want that because after COVID, they raised spending to an unsustainable level through the Inflation Reduction Act, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. They raised it. They got it to the highest level it had ever been, and now it's in their best interest to keep just doing a continuing resolution, right? And never coming back and re-examining things. What happens when you do that is the Department of Defense doesn't come in. We don't come in and look at the Department of Defense and say, well, these programs are not producing results and these programs are, so let's reduce this one and allocate more over here or reduce this and send it to deficit reduction. We're not even examining that stuff because the system's so broken. And frankly, we're not even going to get, in my view, we're not going to get to appropriations bills this year because all of our time is being taken up by this reconciliation process. So we got to get this thing done. The Senate needs to get it passed, get it back over to the House so that we can get to fixing the problem. Now, my hope is that we can use this year to kind of turn the aircraft carrier a bit, get reconciliation done, and then next year we fully embrace passing 13 appropriations bills, having that consideration that goes through the House and the Senate. I mean, to be honest with you, the last 2 years, the House passed several of the appropriation bills, but the Senate refused to pass a single appropriations bill.
Well, they just don't have the votes, right? With the Democrats,
right?
They need 7 more seats,
right? But even when the Democrats controlled the Senate, it wasn't in their best interest to pass an appropriations bill because then it opened it up to, gee, we have to examine these programs. They just wanted it to be as much spending as possible.
That's Jeff Crank. He's live in studio. We're going to continue this conversation, and I'm going to ask him about Space Force and some issues in his own district. We'll move from the federal level to the district level. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Lots of text messages coming in on this conversation. By the way, you can text the Dan Kaplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Jeff Crank, representative from Congressional District 5. That's the Colorado Springs area, El Paso County. All right, let's get district local here. A lot of questions, people looking Space Force. What are you hearing?
Well, obviously on the headquarters of U.S. Space Command and where that is, it's currently headquartered Colorado Springs. There has been a move by some lawmakers in other states to try and get it out of Colorado and move it somewhere else. We're working hard, and I would say as a delegation, we're working hard. I'm certainly working with our 4 Republicans very diligently, but also with our 2 U.S. senators and other members of the delegation to do everything we can to make sure that it stays here. Makes complete sense to keep it here. There's really not been any reason given why you would want to militarily move it from here. In fact, I would argue that even today, there's more reason to keep it in Colorado. Colorado Springs is the headquarters for U.S. Northern Command, as well as U.S. Space Command. They share a parking lot. The 2 4-star generals talk constantly about and coordinate things. I asked them that in a hearing in the Armed Services Committee just the other day, and they said, we have very seamless communications about these issues and protecting the homeland. Well, with the president's declaration of Golden Dome, and by the way, I formed the Golden Dome Caucus in Congress. So I'm trying to get broad support for President Trump's Golden Dome initiative, which, as we see in Israel, is critically important. If the American people knew how woefully inadequate our defense is against incoming ICBMs, they'd be very frightened right now. And we need to do a better job on that coming out. But all of that will be controlled by U.S. Northern Command in Colorado Springs. So if Golden Dome is going to be successful, we need to make sure that U.S. Space Command still has that seamless relationship with them. There's no reason to move it. I've asked military commanders, including 4 stars, tell me the military value. What's the military value of moving Space Command somewhere else? And they all tell me there is no military value in moving it. So why do it, right?
So is it just pure politics at this point?
It's pure politics. I mean, it is. It is. People just want it in their state. But here's the thing. It's a fully operational command right now, stood up as a fully operational command. When the original decision was made to move it to Alabama back in 2021, I think, early January of 2021, it wasn't a fully operational command. It has since become fully operational in Colorado Springs. So again, why would you move it? What else has changed? The threat from space has changed. The threat from Russia and China has grown immensely over those 4 years. We don't need a disruption of that. And lastly, it would cost an exorbitant amount of money to move it, despite what some would say. We've had others saying, well, if you have to build a new headquarters in Colorado Springs, it's going to cost money. Well, it's going to cost money to move it there. That's money to move it to Alabama or to somewhere else. But in addition, you're going to have the cost of moving personnel there. So it's going to be, I believe, an estimate show it would be $2 billion or more to move it at a time when America is looking in the seat cushions to find coins, right? Because of our $35 trillion of debt. Makes no sense to move it. We're making that case to the president. So far, no decision has been made, which means it stays here in Colorado, and we hope that the president continues to do that. And, I would make one other quick case. There's a political reason here, too. We have 4 House seats that are Republican here in Colorado. Moving Space Command makes it harder or makes it easier for Democrats to start taking some of those seats, right? If you make Colorado Springs less military, over time, that's going to weaken a Republican base. So I don't think a Republican president wants that. Gabe Evans, there's a lot of space in Gabe Evans' district. It would be a blow to Gabe Evans if they were to move Space Command out of Colorado. So for all those reasons, we're arguing hard for it.
Well, it's a compelling argument. Have you been able to talk to the president directly?
I haven't talked to the president directly. We've talked to a lot of people around the president, and I believe that the president has been talked. We have delivered the message, sort of through proxies, if you will, to the president of the importance of keeping it here. We're going to keep doing it, and I have asked. In fact, just yesterday, I talked with the White House Legislative Affairs Office and said I would like to talk with them over the next couple of weeks and get a meeting with some folks over at the White House.
I got a question on that for Jeff Crank, a congressman from CD5. Is Golden Dome feasible? I remember the promises of Reagan decades ago, and those were satellite-based lasers that were going to be shooting things down. There was a recent report by, I don't remember the group of it, but they're a group of physicists. And earlier this year, they released a report that says, based on the science that we have, Golden Dome cannot work. It can't functionally do what it's promised to do based on what we have right now. And they cite things like the past 40 years of technology we've heard over and over again. And they cite the fact that inside of Israel, it's geographic dependent. It's a smaller area. And part of the reason is because of the USA landmass and our borders. It functionally can't work based on what we have now. Is this just a solve that we are trying to give people to make us feel safer, or is this functionally possible?
Well, and Bill, there's a lot of folks who ask that question. I would tell you that I was in Washington, D.C. as a staff member in the 1990s. That same question was being asked about whether it was technically feasible to shoot down a missile with another missile. Ron Dellums, who was the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee at the time, who was very opposed to ballistic missile defense, made the argument that you couldn't. And my answer would be, we have the answer today. You can ask the people of Israel whether that works or not. Now, there's always going to be people who say it's not technically feasible, and I would encourage you to Google, go back and look. Back in the 1990s, there were scientists who were also politicians. They just didn't admit it, but there were scientists who said it's not technically feasible to have ballistic missile defense and shoot a missile out of the air with another missile. We've proven that that is the case. I've asked that very question of the commander of U.S. Space Command. I've asked that question of the commander of U.S. Northern Command. Is this technically feasible? Is it something we can do? They've told me that it is. I've asked industry leaders, folks at Lockheed Martin, at Boeing, at some of these other companies, is this something that we can do? They say, yes, we're going to have to invest resources to do it. It's going to cost a lot of money to do it, but we can do it. We do have it, the capability to do it.
And I bet some of those people also said the F-35 was going to function perfectly as well. So I'm not certain I put as weight in there. And if we talk about the Golden Dome functionally based on technology working, Iran has proven just in the past few days that it is not perfect and it can be penetrated. I mean, that Israel has suffered some severe losses because of it.
But Bill, imagine if Israel didn't have Iron Dome today. What they would be suffering from, right? If all of these missiles were getting through, we're stopping right now. They're stopping 90% of the missiles coming through. Imagine if that happened. And again, we're looking forward to a world where the threat is going to be much greater than we have in Israel right now. They're developing hypersonics now in China, in other countries. The threat is going to have to be solved from space in order to solve some of these hypersonic things. So it's going to have to be a totally different system than the one that is Iron Dome right now to protect us through Golden Dome. But I just believe this. There were people when we tried to land men on the moon who said that is not technically feasible. But I think America does its greatest work when we stand up and we accept the challenge and we, you can't just go in and say, well, we can, turn the whole earth into water. I mean, that we're not going to be able to do. But I think that there are things that we rise as a nation to accept the challenge. And I think we have to do that on this issue. Otherwise, what's the answer? Mutually assured destruction? That's a 75-year-old policy that existed when it was two nations. It was the old Soviet Union and the United States.
Has mutually assured destruction worked? Have we had nuclear war since then?
It's worked generally, But,
no, it's worked 100%.
Well,
we haven't had a nuclear war, and nobody's used nuclear weapons.
But you
as an
had
offensive
more
weapon.
countries get more nukes.
But that's mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
That's the idea behind it, is the defense side of it. Yeah,
But
that
sure,
would
do
be
you
expected.
think it's worked though? I mean, you have more countries.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
the idea?
like Pakistan.
All I'm
Well,
saying
to
is-
Jeff's point, you didn't have Pakistan having
Nobody's-
nukes back
again,
then.
The reason mutually assured destruction exists is because it's a deterrent. That if you launch the missiles, it's mutually assured you're destroyed as well. So that is the preventative attitude. The idea, it's not the number of people that have the missiles. It's the idea that you're assured of destruction on the other end, which brings us back to the Golden Dome. So if we have it, functionally, does that eliminate mutually assured destruction? In your opinion, does it eliminate mutually assured destruction, Congressman Crank, if we have Golden Dome?
Well, I don't think it eliminates mutually assured destruction, but mutually assured destruction only works if the other actor is rational. What you're trying to say is that you're using an old system where it was, I would say the Soviets, they were communists, but they were also rational. They also understood that if we launched and they launched, that would happen. I don't know that I trust the mullahs in Iran to have that same rational capability. I don't think I trust Kim Jong-un to have that. Now, maybe you do, but I think most of the American people wouldn't.
I do, only because of sense of self-survival. That the idea of mutually assured destruction, when they send it off, they're going to destroy themselves.
These are people that strap bombs to themselves and go up and push a button and blow themselves up. They don't care about mutually assured destruction.
Yes, they do, because when they flew those planes, they flew them into American buildings, not Saudi Arabian buildings, not Iranian buildings. They do care about loss of life on their own soil. So they do. They absolutely do concern about the loss of life on their own soil. We don't see them advocating for suicide bombers inside of their own country. They don't do that. They go and do them somewhere else.
Bill, let me ask you this,
somewhere else.
But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If the Chinese could develop a Golden Dome system, would they do it?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And then what would happen? The next step is an arms race.
So, we have an arms race. Hello, we've had one for 75 years. The Chinese are developing, right now, they're developing hypersonic weapons.
Yes, and does this supercharge it? Once those missiles are irrelevant, does this then supercharge the arms race? Are we just going back to the future and starting back in the mid-'70s and doing the same arms race at a time in which the U.S. can't afford it?
Yeah, I think...
Where's the money come from?
I think we're we're going to have to find the money. I mean, that is the reason we have a federal government, is to protect the United States. It's not to give 35-year-olds Medicaid so that they can sit and not have work requirements.
Well, it depends on
so we are going to have to
the
find the money.
situation of that 35-year-old. To be fair, can't say every 35-year-old. To be fair,
well, to people who are able-bodied, that's what the law says. Able-bodied people who are of working age, between the age of 18 and 65, will have to work in order to get Medicaid.
Yeah, part-time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the point is, we are going to have to find that money. But the federal government is here to protect us, and we can't just say, "Hey, we're just going to let we're going to ignore a threat from China. Let them go develop hypersonics. Let them go develop a Golden Dome," because you just admitted that they would develop that if they could, and we're just going to sit back.
If they wanted it. So far, I don't see any indication that they are, though. Are you?
I'm seeing I will tell you this: the threat from China from space is enormous.
Oh, I don't disagree on the threat from China.
Every day.
That's different than a Golden Dome.
I guess I just don't understand why all throughout history we've had technological improvements in warfare, and then all of a sudden we're like, no, we don't want to.
I don't understand what you mean, because from what I've seen, we've had lots and lots of advantages in technological warfare.
So the critique with you, Bill, on Golden Dome is
it's
just
inefficient.
cost?
It's inefficient. It won't work, and the technology doesn't exist.
Bill,
we've tried this before. I don't see anything that is going to be necessarily effective. Without the buy-in on Canada, we can't get there.
Okay, we only got a minute. I want to give Jeff the last final word here.
You're using the exact same argument that Ron Dellums and all the peaceniks used in the 1990s to say ballistic missile defense won't work. They said that the Patriot missile system specifically will not work. You cannot shoot down a missile with another missile. And they were right. It didn't work in 1990. But we push forward and we develop these weapon systems. But if you want to live in a world where we say, oh, we can't do this, that's okay. But we live in the America that sent a man to the moon. We live in an America that did help Israel develop a ballistic missile defense system called Iron Dome today. And I want to live in a world where we have a Golden Dome that protects us from crazy people like the Ayatollah in Iran or
to
Kim Jong-un.
Israel seems to be the perfect example of why that's so important. All right, Jeff Crank, thank you so very much for a robust debate.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun.
That was
guys.
so much fun.
Bill, that was fun. Why don't we do that again? Huh?
I love when you come in the studio.
That's
You're
great.
the best.
We'll do that again, my friend.
Representative Jeff Crank. You can follow him on X at Rep Jeff Crank. Rep Jeff Crank, representing the good people of the 5th District of Colorado. Thank you. Again,
Jeff and Bill,
thank
thanks
you.
for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
This has been a treat. This is
we'll
great.
continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.